How are you? This is our first podcast. Tyler and Rolly and Tyler, the old guy and the young guy. So we are basically starting our first show, and we're sort of a little undecided as far as the name is concerned. So we have two ideas right now. We want to ask you what do you think is the best idea? Something like this would be the name grandson and the Nieto. That's one because I am the granddad, and Tyler is the Nieto. By the way, if you had any questions about that, I think that just by looking at us right now, you already have a pretty good idea. Now, the other one would be experience and juventud. Experience and juventud. If you have another idea, please let us know. Tyler is going to give you his email a little later on, and you'll be able to contact him that way. Anyways, through the podcast, we're going to have that email there that you can contact us. So those are two names that we're thinking about. So you give us whatever you think is better for us. A little bit about myself. Well, I've been in this business a long time, 1987. Tyler, of course, he was not born back then. In 1987, I started in WQBA, a very famous Spanish radio station. It was the number one station, and the ratings were off the roof. They were unbelievable. And I was very proud and happy to belong to WQBA for many years. Back then, I started in Super Q doing Dolphins broadcasts. That was like a little later on in my career. And I've done the Dolphins for over 30 years. So that is a long time. I worked in TV and radio, Telemundo, Univision, now currently at WSUA America Radio. So I have done a lot of different jobs in the business for many years. And Tyler, well, people want to hear about Tyler because I've been talking too much, Tyler. So go ahead.
As Rolly stated, I'm his grandson. Right now, I'm a graduate of the University of Florida, contribute to Sports Illustrated as an NFL writer, and I also play football over at Savannah State. And just a little bit more about this podcast, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music. Right now, we're doing once a week. We might up it to two or three times a week. And also, like you said, later in this episode, I'll give my email, just, any suggestions on the name. My favorite is the first one that he stated, but we're still open to, any suggestions that we can get.
Uh, why did you decided to do this? Why not? Granddad that is into sports and sports broadcasting for many years, and the grandson that is starting out. He already writes very well for Sports Illustrated. He's got some nice articles out there that you can check out. So and he's still playing football. So he's got that aspect of the sporting life of the athlete's life that he can bring to the podcast that I think that is going to be very interesting. So that's what I think that we want to bring to the table. And we're going to focus on Miami sports. That's going to be the focus of our podcast. And we'll talk about some national stories also in the world of sports, which are important, but that will be the focus of our episodes. Also, we'll try to introduce you to some phrases in Spanish, some things that are funny, that are different for those Anglos, or for those Hispanics that have been born here, or like Tyler, and that they need a little training. They need a little training in Spanish or whatever. We're going to help you with that also. And we have a very practical word today that we're going to discuss a little later on in the episode. But how about if we start talking about, what everyone is talking about right now? No, before that, I think that it is important that we give a number to this one, right? We should give a number to each episode. And this is not number 3, no? This is not number 4. This is number 1. So when I think of number 1, I think of, for example, Luis Castillo. Do you remember Luis Castillo? I know that you remember at least, Tyler, you remember at least on video, right? You seen something of Luis?
I remember you talking about him, and I remember him playing for the Mets, but you would always talk about how helpful he was in that World Series year for the Marlins.
Yeah,
Because all
yeah,
three
yeah.
of
Luis
them, yeah.
Castillo. And he's a character, very funny guy and very, very fast. He had this long hitting streak, and he was a great defensive player and a great base stealer. So he was number one. But there are other number ones in the Miami history, right?
We're talking about local champions. You can't forget about Chris Bosh. He brought number one to Miami. He actually wore four with the Raptors, but came to Miami, decided to switch it up. It seemed like it worked for him. You know, two championships in 4 years. Heat Hall of Famer, one of the best players, definitely in franchise history, I'd say.
And do you ever forget a guy named Garrett Your Premium? Wow, that's Super Bowl, Tyler. You didn't see that one for sure. But against Washington, that gotta be. He was a great kicker, but that was the probably the worst play in the history of a Super Bowl of Super Bowls. Trying to kick and then try to throw the ball. That was something else.
I mean, that play happened, I think, 30 years before I was born, and I've seen it countless times. So it's definitely like one of the biggest bloopers in NFL history for sure.
All right, let's get into the really hot stuff. What's going on in town right now, and all throughout the states, and I would say internationally, because Miami Dolphins are an international team. I'll tell you right now, and this is something that nobody knows, and I don't know it, but it's just a prediction. They'll be playing in Real Madrid Stadium next year. All right. So that gives you that's my opinion. Is there's no news regarding that. There's nothing official. We know that there is a game that they're planning for Madrid, and Miami's got those international rights and marketing rights in Spain. So I'm guessing that Dolphins will be playing in Madrid next year. Now we're starting the season against Jacksonville. Tough game. It's not an easy game. Miami, a team that is shooting for Super Bowls. I mean, they're talking about winning a playoff game, but I think that we cannot be talking just about winning a playoff game because they haven't won in such a long time a playoff game. We got to talk Super Bowl because this team is built to win a Super Bowl in the next 2 or 3 years. That's more or less the window. And so they have some changes on defense uh, that you have to worry about. They lost one of the top 2 or 3 players on the team in Wilkins. So how do you replace a guy like that? You have some injuries at defensive end, outside linebacker with the situation with Chubb and Phillips. Phillips will be ready for Jacksonville. And then you have Hill, you have obviously Waddle ready to go. And the great question mark at this time is Murray, whether he'll be available or not. He's got a hamstring injury. He's a very important player on this team. We need him. So those are the guys that are hurt that you worry a little bit about. Benito Jones, the same situation. He hasn't played basically in the preseason, so you have some question marks about him. And Campbell and Benito Jones have the responsibility of maybe taking that place of Wilkins. So that's going to be very important. They might use 3 safeties, Tyler, from the beginning. They're talking about Poyer, May, and Holland maybe playing together. And the work that we would do with these guys, this is a new defensive coordinator. We had a very good one last year, but some of the players were not very happy with him. So this guy comes in from Baltimore. He's got a tremendous resume, but now he has to make it work, with some new guys. And they're facing a pretty good offensive team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback. But you've been covering Jacksonville pretty closely lately. So give me a rundown on the team and what do you expect? How do you see the game, Tyler?
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned just the general expectations of this team and the window kind of being shorter than others. Because you look at another team that like maybe similar in talent, kind of like the Lions, it's very different for them because some of their best players are very young guys. You have like Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are guys that are in their early 20s still. You look at the Dolphins, like some of our best players, Tyreek Hill, Ron Armstead, are getting older, starting to get banged up a little bit more. So like you don't know how much longer you have with these guys, especially, even contract situations as well. So that window definitely is a lot shorter than some of the other, more talented teams in this league. And you mentioned the Jaguars. I think the first thing that should scare Dolphins fans is their pass rush. Trayvon Walker and then Teron Armstead as well. Then you got Josh Hines Allen. Those are three of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. Just the two edge rushers specifically, they combined for more sacks than any other duo in the NFL last year. Both of them had double-digit sacks. I think it was like 27 and a half total sacks last year. And offensive line's always been a big question with this team, whether it's injury concerns or inconsistency at certain positions. They graded out well last year, surprisingly. They actually ranked among among the league's best in sacks allowed and QB hits, but there is still some questions there. So the first thing I would worry about is that defensive line and that pass rush. Just how are you going to keep Tua healthy? How are you going to, get him those quick reads without, being worried and kind of being hurried throughout the game?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the AFC East now, and the possibilities of the Dolphins in the division. I think there's some changes and opportunities for our Dolphin team. But before we get into that, we forgot to mention Jonas Smith and that F. And I know that you had an article regarding that. The F position that has been created by the Dolphins, which is sort of a fullback, tight end type of position. He can be lined up besides the X and the Y receivers. He can be lined up, outside of a tight end. But according to McDaniels, the coach is a guy that can be used as a receiver, as a blocker. And I think that's something that is going to be very productive for the Dolphins. It's a new package, and we gotta look for it right off the bat against Jacksonville Sunday. And I look for Smith in particular to be a guy that he caught 50 passes last year. I think it was his best season. He can be very positive for this team that already has tremendous weapons offensively. But looking at the AFC East, Tyler, how do you see the division? I believe that the Dolphins have a great shot at winning the division. And I think that you have to take advantage of this situation because the Dolphins, a lot of times, they're visiting teams as wildcard teams, going to the cold in January. You're going to Baltimore, going to Kansas City. What happened last year? You want to avoid that, right?
Well, I mean, probably since your days covering the team, the Bills have been the Dolphins' kryptonite, when it comes, especially as you get later in the season, fighting for playoff spots. I think it might be a little bit easier this year compared to previous years. They lost their number one receiver in Stephon Diggs. He's now with the Texans. And they also lost Mitch Morse, who was an offensive lineman, center for them. So that was two, key losses this year. And just in general, well, first of all, another team that you can't forget about, their season ended almost before it even started was the New York Jets. And that's any football fan's nightmare. You get the big shiny free agent, and then first game, he blows out his Achilles just within a few plays. But it seems like training camp's been going well over there. Him and Garrett Wilson have a very good connection. So, and Garrett Wilson, he was one of the best rookies just a couple of years ago and has continued to improve. So they could become one of the best duos in the NFL. And that offensive line also got better. They got Tyron Smith. It's a future Hall of Famer, still an All-Pro last year, kind of proved that he can still do it. Wouldn't worry that much about the Patriots, to be completely honest. Quarterback's a big question there. New coaching staff, they're still kind of getting used to things. But I do think the Bills and the Jets, will both give the Dolphins a run for their money if we have trouble staying healthy and things like that throughout the year.
That is key, staying healthy, because last year, the last 5 or 6 games, the team was had a lot of guys that were very important players on the team that were not available, and that affected the team a lot. And probably that's why the Dolphins ended up now winning the division. Well, we wanted to introduce you guys to a word in Spanish, or a phrase in Spanish, or a saying in Spanish. We'll have to find a name for this segment, Tyler. By the way, we'll find it eventually. And you can give us suggestions regarding that also. The first word that we're going to introduce to you guys that are trying to learn Spanish or have forgotten a lot of the Spanish is a word that you can use almost for anything. It's got many uses, and it has many meanings, different meanings. The word coño. Coño, Alvarez Guedes made it famous, okay? So I'm not pretending to be Alvarez Guedes, and this has been done before. They have explained this word before, so I'm not the first one to explain it this way, all right? So let's clarify that. Coño, C-O-N-O, okay? We have the word ñ in Spanish that we don't have in English. So Coño. Okay. There's many meanings of coño, many ways that you can use coño. But one way, well, coño means you can say that the translation would be something like wow, coño, wow. Okay, that would be sort of a translation. But you can use wow this way, for example. If you feel pain, if you're hurting, you can use coño. For example, using a hammer, right? I know that's something that I would do. Trying to put a nail on the wall, and I hit myself on one finger with the hammer. I would say,
Yeah.
"Coño, como duele! Wow, coño, it hurts!" Right? So that's showing pain. Another way that you can use coño will be when something is unbelievable. I cannot believe this. Like, someone comes up to me and he tells me, "Hey, remember Peter that used to go to school with us?" "Oh yeah, I remember Peter." "You know what, Peter? Peter married 5 times and he's got 12 kids." So I'm gonna say something like, "Coño, unbelievable! I can't believe it. No lo puedo creer." Okay, that's coño. It's
I was wondering
unbelievable,
where you
right?
were going with that, but
And
it
then,
turned
then the coño for happiness. The Dolphins, they have not won a playoff game since 2000, right? They beat Indianapolis back there in 2000. So they're playing Kansas City now, January of 2025. We're at Hard Rock Stadium. Okay, Tua throws a touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill in the last 10 seconds of the game. We beat Kansas City, all right? And we are going to the Super Bowl, for example. I'm going to say something like, "Coño, no lo creo, ganamos." "Coño, wow, we won. I can't believe it. I'm so happy." Okay, that's the third coño, but you will not believe it. There are more ways that you can use coño. So I'll give you a few weeks and I'll get back to coño. And we can get back to it because this is not only three. There's quite a few that you can use coño. But let's change now to hurricanes, Tyler. Uh, Hurricanes. I mean, they came out. Uh, Florida, and I mean, some people were expecting a tough game, and they just blew out the Florida Gators, which is a team that is, of course, is still growing. It's got some weaknesses on the team, but it's supposed to be a team that was improving. Miami completely dominated the game. Cam Ward, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, one INT. Restrepo got 7 passes. The defense played great. And I was impressed in particular with the discipline of the team. This is a team, remember last year, a lot of penalties, hurt themselves a lot. And this team was very disciplined, was very loud in that stadium. I was expecting, 5, 6, 7 penalties, you know, and that was not the case. And I think Ward has a lot to do with it. This is a guy that is very elusive in that backfield. He's got always extra time to get that offense and those passes going because of the ability he's got of scrambling back there. And I think that the guy can take this thing a long way this year. How do you see that? How do you see the game, Tyler?
you mentioned, Cam Ward's just a general elusiveness. I remember, might have been 2 years ago, I was doing a scouting report for a Washington State wide receiver. Like halfway through, I just had to stop watching the receiver because this quarterback is just running in circles, making defenders miss, throwing the ball wherever he wants to on the field. And it was just so impressive. And I think we saw that, when he was kind of stuck in that limbo between declaring for the draft or, figuring out what school he was going to transfer to. Miami wasn't the only school that wanted him. Florida State pushed very hard for him. A lot of big name schools wanted Cam Ward. Miami, he was lucky enough to get him, it seems like. But that's the power of having a quarterback. When you load up a team with skill players that are very highly ranked, a lot of them coming from Miami, which is nice to see after a while. You have guys like Restrepo, Ray Joseph, JoJo Trader. Those are all local guys that are able to play in front of their home crowd, and I think they're headed for good things this season. It's definitely encouraging. Whether Florida was going to be good this year or not, a victory in the swamp, first game of the season, that always means something, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that it's a team that definitely could make the playoffs. Now you got 12 teams in the playoffs. Maybe win the ACC. They have a game coming up this Saturday that they should be able to handle, even though Florida A&M won 12 games last season. But I'm really impressed with the team. I think that also the recruiting has helped a lot. They have had some great recruiting classes in the last couple of years, and the one coming up should be very strong also. So I think that Mario Cristobal, you have to congratulate him regarding that. I think Mario is doing a great job. Something important that we should mention also, we're going to have guests throughout the shows, the new, the shows coming up. That's something that we're planning also. Athletes at college level, professional athletes, of course, journalists. That's the type of people that we're gonna plan on having on our shows starting near, very soon. Another thing that I wanted to mention is very quickly, and this is not in the schedule, but I'll mention them because I think it's important that we mention them. Inter Miami, or soccer team, is doing very well. Number one in MLS as far as record is concerned. And Luis Suarez is playing his last game for Uruguay now in the next few hours. The team is doing very well. They're getting Messi probably back on September 14th. So this is a team that can give us a title. Definitely they're ready for a title. If they don't win a title, it will be a disappointment. Maybe talking about the opposite end of Miami sports now, with the situation that they have, is Marlins. What's gonna happen with the Marlins? Are they gonna have a resurgence? Well, they made a lot of changes, a lot of movement. They traded almost the general manager got traded. No, he didn't get traded, but he could have. I mean, it's unbelievable how many people they move. But they have some new guys and some guys that they were already here that are doing fairly well. So it all depends also in the injuries, how the guys come back. And I think that they can be competitive. The thing with the Marlins is the story that is always happens with them. They have to retain some of those players, some of those young players that are good. You have to retain them. You cannot continue to move players and move them out of here and expect to be able to be a winning ball club. That's very, very important. Xavier Edwards is hitting 341, is doing very well at shortstop, so that's a keeper. And then of course Alcantara and Eury Perez, coming back from injuries, how well they do. Belloso, the guy that they basically introduced this year, he doesn't throw 95 or 96, but he's got great control. He's been very effective, so that's a guy that probably they can count on in the future. The pitching looks good. Some of the new guys, they have to show that they're not just prospects, that they're keepers, that they're guys that are keepers. And then, of course, Berger, he's got 25 home runs, most of them after the All-Star game. That's a guy that you can keep at third base or first base. And then you have guys like Stowers, guys like Norby. How much are they going to give you? That's the future of the Marlins out there. And we're going to have to wait until next year to have a better idea of where this team is going. So I think that's it for today, Tyler. How did we do? We did okay.
I think it went well. I got a little worried with the Coño talk, but you steered it in the right direction. I think a lot of people could have learned from that. A word of many uses for sure. Fits any
Well,
situation.
hopefully we some people learn a little bit with us today, and we can keep them informed on what's going on in particular with Miami sports. So next week we'll be here again. It will be probably Wednesday or Thursday of next week. We'll be on with you guys again, and enjoy it. I hope you had a good time with us, and arrivederci, goodbye, hasta la próxima.